crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel, heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the bad, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. It is a Thursday morning, and we are unfiltered as always here on Strictly Speaking. Dr. Everett Piper today, as it has been for most Thursdays in the last nearly 10 years. We've been treated to the commentary and the exceptional wisdom of Dr. Piper. Today will be no different. So we're looking forward to hearing from Dr. Piper about, well, a whole host of things, but particularly millennials and Gen Zers who need to have a come to Jesus moment, if I may. That's a summary, but it's got a lot of really important meat behind it, that story or that topic of conversation does. So looking forward to Dr. Piper at the top of the next hour. In this first hour, we have a lot of other things to get to. President Trump made some striking statements yesterday at his cabinet meeting. He also, so did Jill Biden. Jill Biden made some striking comments yesterday, including a confession. And it's a confession that I don't know if she actually wants to stand by. I'll explain it the best I can in a couple of minutes. But first, it is the 28th morning of the fifth month in the year of our Lord, 2025, or 26, excuse me. Sorry, I had the 5 on the mind. But it is the inspirational motivational calendar, flip calendar. The 28th says the first and most important step towards success is the feeling that we can indeed succeed. Nelson Boswell. There you go. I like to give you that every single day because I've been looking at that motivational calendar every day for 35 years. And I think it's got some really, really good stuff to it. All right. So good morning to you. Good morning to the chatters. What's the chat room looking like right about now? I see a lot of happy faces in there. Familiar faces, familiar names. My question is to Joanne and CAD and B. Morgan and Sally and Roz and Rosebud and hockey player Mike and Sherry and who else do I see? Uncle Odie and Marty and Jimbo and Jake and Karen and Calvinist. All y'all. welcome. Who'd you bring with you today? Remember, that's the key. That is the core of what grassroots is all about. This is a grassroots growing show. That's it. Who'd you bring with you today? Just like door knocking, you got to be door knocking on your phone or on your email or something like that. Tell people, here's the link. Join us on tomorrow's show. Bring somebody with you into the live stream. That is how we expand. So I appreciate you all very, very much. So I want to dive right in. Dylan is running the controls behind the scenes for us this morning, and I want to dive right into this because, like I said, there are a lot of things we want to get into. The first one is that and in fact, let me put today's graphic up on the screen again. This was the placeholder that you saw there. Jill Biden shocking confession. I want to get that in this hour. I'm going to start with that, as a matter of fact. Citizen journalist under attack. That's Nick Shirley in California, and what that means, bigger picture. And then, as I talked about yesterday briefly, I want to talk about it in a little more depth. The crash. That's the Strongsville story. The Strongsville story, meaning, of course, the terrible, tragic death of two young people at the hands of a very disturbed and maybe just straight up evil 17-year-old who smashed her car going 100 miles an hour into a brick wall in what had to have been a premeditated and pre-practiced run as far as that location. I'll explain that to the best of my ability in a little while here. But just a horrific case of what was supposed to be a murder-suicide. It would almost be guaranteed when you watch it. But if you already watched it, you know that. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, like I said, coming up. Okay, but where I want to start this morning, and Dylan, if you can go ahead and fire story number one up onto the screen there, or link number one up onto the screen there. Jill Biden, literally Jill Biden, is making a shocking confession now. She says, and she said this in an interview with CBS Sunday Morning. Jill Biden said that she was so horrified and frightened by her husband's debate performance back in 2024, and that would be the summer debate performance. It was in June or July, I think it was June, which was very, very early for a debate, if you recall, when that whole thing went down. Jill Biden said that when her husband froze the way he did, she thought he was having a stroke. That was her actual confession. She thought that she was having a stroke, or that he was having a stroke, excuse me. And she said the reason why is, quote, "I had never seen him like that before or since." Never was her direct quote. Never saw him like that before or since. I thought he was having a stroke, and it scared me to death. I've got some important points that I want to make on this. So let's relive that just a little bit here. So Dylan, go ahead and bring up number 3. Let's remind everybody exactly what it looked like when Joe Biden was on that debate stage in summer of 2024 against President Trump. This is just a 1-minute clip. Watch this.
What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million, billion dollars, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicaid, beat it to death, and he's destroying.
That was only the worst moment of that night of bumbles and stumbles and embarrassment from Joe Biden. It was brutal, obviously, but that was the worst part of it. And that's the part where Jill Biden now says that she thought her husband was having a stroke. Okay? That's her confession now. 2 things. Number 1, why didn't you call for medical help? If you thought your husband was having a stroke, why didn't the team of doctors that travels with the then president, why didn't you rush somebody to the stage to help him if you thought he was having a stroke? Because when you're having a stroke, every second counts. If the brain is being denied oxygen, which it looked like maybe was happening there as he stood there and we finally beat Medicare. If you thought he was having a stroke, why did you do that? Number two, if you thought he was having a stroke, why would you then be comfortable pushing him out there to be the president of the United States for another 4 years? Why would you have said my stroke victim husband should be the leader of the free world for the next 4 years? This is what happens when blind, naked ambition trumps all sensitivities, senses, any realistic understanding of what's going on. She wanted power so much. Remember, her husband let her run cabinet meetings. She was actually the president for a portion of his presidency, and she was not about to lose that again. My husband's having a stroke, but I am still going to push him out there. Remember what happened right after? When the debate was over and Biden had finished humiliating himself? Dylan, number 2, please. This is the one that really, what does this say about her? What does this say about her party? What does this say about Democrats? After the debate was over, Jill Biden, who saw her husband nearly having a stroke, in her own words, her own mind, she thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. Afterwards, here's what she did.
I can't thank you all enough for staying and for being here and for all your support. Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts.
Look at him, as she said. You can stop it, though.
Yes.
Dylan, you can stop it. It's fine.
So, Joe, I'm going to...
Look at him as he stands there as she... No, keep it up. Keep it up there. I want to... keep the screenshot up there, please. I got it. Look at him standing there like frozen, almost mummified, just unable to move his face, unable to move his body as she talks to him like he's a kindergartner. Good job, little Joey. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. Good job, Joey. That's how she treated him, and that's how she viewed him at that time. And again, that should have been, at that moment in time, should have been absolutely disqualifying. Ultimately, it turned out to be so. But now here she is, going back to today's shocking story, or the revelation that she said she thought that Joe Biden, was having a stroke. And did she again, as soon as it was, first of all, she didn't rush medical care to him during that moment. Second of all, when it was over, it would have been time to sweep him off of the stage and go seek medical care if she thought that he was actually having some sort of a clot or a lack of oxygen to the brain and so forth. But she was still ready to push him out there. And then, as a matter of fact, she said after that, she wanted him to continue in the campaign. She was livid when they suggested he step aside and that they hand the scepter of power to Kamala Harris to be the Democrat nominee in the presidential race. She fought that tooth and nail, but now she's trying to tell us she thought he had a stroke. And here's the other thing, and again, this is a little bit unnecessary right now because, again, we've moved forward, but it's about who the Democrats are is the reason why this is a story right now. It's why it's being discussed on shows and on podcasts and so forth all over the place right now. It's not about Joe Biden in that particular moment. It's about what it says that the First Lady, Jill Biden, was again so blindly ambitious in her power-seeking mind that if her husband was having a medical emergency, she didn't give a rat's a about that. She wanted him to continue forward and to be the next president again, to continue to wield power so that he can give it to her. So now the question becomes, okay, if you thought your husband was having a stroke and you still wanted him to go forward, let's talk about your powers of evaluation and of diagnosis. Because you said that you had never seen him like that before, and you have never seen him like that since. Do you not live with him anymore? Because we don't live with him. And we didn't live with him in 2021 and 2022 and in 2023 and 2024. And we sure as hell all saw that many, many times before the freeze up on the debate stage. And we talked about how absolutely cognitively impaired he was, how mentally unfit he was to lead the country and to lead the world as the president of the United States, whomever it might be, is also the leader of the free world. We saw it. It was on television on a loop constantly. Maybe you didn't see it because it was Fox News and Newsmax and places like that. But we saw it all the time. And you're going to tell us you haven't seen it since? So that means since that moment in which you thought he was stroking out, which was in summer of 2024, and now that we are on the verge of summer of 2026, you're telling me in the last 2 years he has not exhibited those freeze up moments and those stumbling and bumbling and stammering words that we all got so used to hearing from him? Like, I'm sorry, that's the best I can do off the cuff. But you all know the one I'm talking about. The fact that I just did that and you knew what I was talking about is proof. But she's never seen that before, and she has never seen that since. What it says about Democrats is the key here. I don't care about Joe Biden anymore. I don't care about what he did. I don't want to be callous and sound heartless to say I don't care about his health insofar as that I wish him ill health. I don't wish him ill health. I don't wish anybody ill health. Okay? Well, there might be some people I would wish ill health, actually. And I'm talking about the people who are, shouldn't be breathing the same air as the rest of us as well. Child rapists and killers and so on and so forth, maybe nameless people, and maybe some of the world leaders that, like Maduro and Putin and others who have done just, the Ayatollah and so forth, who have done just horrific things to humanity. I might wish them ill health, but that's not for me to decide. When it comes to Joe Biden, I don't care about his health. I really don't. What I care about is the fact that Democrats were willing to prop him up there after everything he did to this country and ask him to stand up there as a puppet, as a Weekend at Bernie's type of corpse, being, having his mouth moved by Barack Obama with his hand up his ass, manipulating his jaw. They would rather have had that than actually have a competent president take over. Joe Biden brought nearly 20 million illegal aliens into this country in the worst invasion in what I think might have been the most treasonous act in the history of the presidency. That might be the case. I guess I'd have to go back and do the history. But in terms of modern history, 1,000 times worse than anything Richard Nixon ever did. 1,000 times worse. He literally, Joe Biden, tried to take down the country. There's no other way to describe the invasion that he orchestrated. I will never get out of my mind, and I will never stop talking about the time when the state of Texas said that if he won't stop the invasion, we'll stop it, at least into our state. And they put up the barbed wire fences and razor wire and so forth along the river so that nobody could cross over and then come into the state of Texas. And Joe Biden sent a crew out there with forklifts to raise that razor wire so that the parade of illegals invading into this country could continue. I will never forget that. I will never forgive that. And I will never forget the fact that there are countless numbers of illegal aliens in this country right now doing horrific, torturous things to American citizens. We just had another illegal alien killed 4 Oklahoma residents and American citizens in a drunk driving. I'm going to talk to Dr. Piper about that too, in a drunk driving situation. Obviously, we don't have to get into the number of human traffickers that brought human beings in. And Lord knows what was the number? How many hundreds of thousands of children did Joe Biden and his administration lose because of the trafficking and the massive scale of it that he allowed to happen in 2021 through 2024? I mean, just extraordinary when you think about everything that has happened because of his open borders policy. I will never forget the fact that he tried to mandate that you get rid of your car and you put yourself into an electric vehicle because the government says so, banning those things outright by 2030. I'll never forget what it did to the economy. I'll never forget what it did to inflation. I'll never forget the fact that SOB tried to jam poison darts into the arm of every American, every man, woman, and child from infancy through their hospice days. And you didn't have a choice. I'll never forget that they mandated that we stay in our homes. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to go into all of it. I'm just giving you the highlights or the lowlights, if you will. And now Jill Biden is saying, yeah, I thought he was having a stroke, but I was going to keep him going out there because the longer he was president, the more powerful I got. That was essentially what it came down to. And I'm glad that it's coming to light now. Better late than never. Transparency is, like I said, always better than opaqueness. All right, so that's number one. Number two, as you see on the graphic, number two, I just wanted to spend a minute or two here on the attack on citizen journalists, which means an attack on you, me, and free speech and freedom of the press. The First Amendment entirely under attack by way of the state of California. Dylan, pull up number 8, please, because I want to talk about Nick Shirley for just a moment or two. This one, again, I heard about it, I don't know, a couple of months ago. They talked about the Nick Shirley Act, did Democrats in California. They were going to try to silence the independent citizen journalists like Nick Shirley, who were providing information that the mainstream media would never touch. I don't want to be redundant on all of this, but how difficult is it for news organizations with millions and billions of dollars in budgets, with just scores of reporters and investigators and journalists to go out there and find this information out? They wouldn't touch it, not because of a lack of resources, but because of lack of interest and desire in the truth. Nick Shirley and the citizen journalists go out there to save the truth and to expose the fraudsters. And California is saying, how dare you? We're going to stop you from doing that. So Nick Shirley posted this yesterday, and I'll read it out loud, and then we'll play that video underneath it. California just voted to pass AB 2624, the Stop Nick Shirley Act. This bill puts journalists at risk for investigating fraud and makes it harder to expose fraud in immigration support services, including NGOs, nonprofits, and healthcare facilities that receive hundreds of millions from the state of California each year. This bill would have made it criminal to expose fake hospices in LA or the Somali Leering Center in Minnesota if they then claim, quote, reasonable fear, and the business owner gives a written demand not to post the video. So the business owner who's committing the fraud, if he gives a demand, don't you expose my fraud. If you show that video to the world on social media exposing me, well, then I'm going to be in trouble. So therefore, I demand that you not do so. And California says, yeah, you got to listen to that demand. You can't post his stuff up there of his crimes if his crimes might actually be negative for him. What the hell is that? Continuing, plain and simple, California is trying to make it harder to expose fraud and scare individuals from investigating fraud in their communities, as they could be sued for an injunction to remove the video, plus forced to pay their attorney fees, minimum $4,000 in damages. The Attorney General's wife, Mia Bonta, created this bill and is now trying to make it law. How is this not a conflict of interest? California is full of fraudsters. And that is exactly correct. So let's listen. Go ahead and play this video, Dylan, if you would, please.
Look, I'm not going to support the bill overall, but at the very least, if you support freedom of speech and the First Amendment, B1 is a problem. And let me quote it in plain English, directly from the bill. A person shall not publicly post or display on the internet the image of a designated immigrant support services provider. That's the language, plain and simple. It goes on to say, well, only if this so-called provider has given a written request. So let me give you an example. Nick Shirley shows up with his camera crew to the Somali Leering Center, or maybe one of the 90 fake hospices operating in a building in Los Angeles that was highlighted by CBS News. Shows up doing the work of a citizen watchdog journalist. This is something we should promote. We should say, look, we want extra set of eyes. People have a right to go out there and kick the tires and find out what are these organizations doing with our taxpayer funds. Nick Shirley records empty beds at the daycare center, records no patients, no medical supplies, no nurses, no doctors at the fake hospices. On the basis of this research, investigative research, posts this on the internet, interviews some of the providers. And all these people do is they hand Nick Shirley a business card.
Excuse me, Mr. DeMaio. Assemblymember Bonta, you are recognized for your point of
I
order.
asked the member from San Diego to actually stick to the merits of this bill, which actually has nothing to do with so-called.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bonta. Your point is well taken. Mr. DeMaio.
Oh, no, I'm absolutely sticking to the specifics of this bill. If you show up and take video of those providers under this bill, all they would have to do, all the fraudsters would have to do is hand a business card over to the investigative journalist. And if they posted that evidence that they caught on video on the internet, they would be violating this law. The lawyers in this room know that absolutely under this language would be prohibited from being posted to the internet. This is outrageous. And I'm urging you to uphold the First Amendment and to protect the right of citizen journalists like Nick Shirley and others to do the work that they've been doing. And they've been exposing fraud. And this is fraud that taxpayers ought to know about. This is the dollars of taxpayers, and we have an obligation to make sure that the transparency is provided. You can hue and cry all you want, but that's the language. And I just walked you through a real example of what Nick Shirley and other citizen journalists do and how it would be made illegal under this bill. When you vote for this, that's what you're voting to do. You are now put on notice, and then when the controversy continues to increase, that's your responsibility.
So as you heard there, State Assemblyman DeMaio was trying to expose the insanity of such a bill that they were about to vote upon, which of course they did with the Democrat-controlled state assembly and passed. You saw them trying to shut him down. And who was it? You know, this is the problem in the state of California, and that's what Nick Shirley was talking about himself in the commentary, because he posted this, but in his caption, he wrote that the Attorney General of California is married to an assembly person from California. So therefore, you've got literally the Attorney General and the legislature, talk about a conflict of interest, working together to do what? To silence people like Nick Shirley. For crying out loud, it's called the Stop Nick Shirley Act. And everything that DeMaio is exposing there was true. Every single element of all of that fraud and all of the lies and all of the fake hospice centers, fake learning centers, childcare centers, fake transportation services, and so forth that have been exposed in California, in Minnesota, and yes, right freaking here in Ohio, the second largest population of Somalis. Now, this would only be a California law, but as you know, As some of these big states go, so go the rest of the nation. It will not stop there. It would probably expand to other states. Would that happen here in the state of Ohio? Banning the type of investigative journalism that would expose, as the Daily Wire did 2 weeks ago with that massive series. We spent a lot of time on this. The Daily Wire went through Columbus and gave it the full Minneapolis and now, California treatment and exposed all of it. And that's why the reporter for the Daily Wire, whose name is escaping me at the moment, ended up on Capitol Hill testifying before Capitol Hill before a committee, and also before Vice President J.D. Vance's anti-fraud organization, to try to get a handle on exactly how many millions, hundreds of millions, and then billions, and maybe hundreds of billions of dollars collectively are being robbed from the American people. And left-wing Democrats, again, I don't care if it's in California or if it's in Maine or if it's in New York or wherever, left-wing Democrats oppose citizen journalism that is going to expose them for their crimes. There's just no other way to say it. It's the reality. And that's one of the things we're fighting, which is why one of the president's statements yesterday at the cabinet meeting is so alarming to me. It was about the midterms. And I'm going to talk about that, but not until I talk to you about our friends, the people who make this program possible. Literally, I could not be here without the support of AFP, Americans for Prosperity Ohio. They are foundational partners. They have been there for me from the beginning, and I want to say thank you to AFP. AFP Ohio is making the state of Ohio the best state that it can be, or at least that's its goal. It's pushing very, very hard from a policy standpoint, not necessarily from a politics standpoint. Sometimes the two are interconnected, of course, but it's about policies. It's not about driving one person out or getting one other person elected specifically. It is about the policies that make Ohio, well, right now, the policies have us middling, literally in the middle of the country in terms of our economic opportunities, our educational freedom, our energy usage, and government accountability. We should be at the top of the list on all of those things because of the resources that this extraordinary state has. That's what AFP Ohio is doing. Americans for Prosperity Ohio. Everything begins at the local level. Volunteer for an AFP chapter near you. There are AFP chapters in virtually every county in the Metro Cleveland area. And to the extent that people are listening to us in Columbus or in Youngstown or in Cincinnati or across Ohio, you've got one near you too. Please look into it. Go to buckeyeblueprint.com, buckeyeblueprint.com, to find the AFP chapter near you and figure out how you can volunteer to help make this state the best that it certainly can be. All right. So thank you to our foundational partners there with AFP Ohio. So I want to just hit this briefly. And this was from yesterday's cabinet meeting, this massive cabinet meeting that the president held. And again, everything being done in front of the camera, which isn't necessarily my favorite thing in the world. I think some things need to be done and said and negotiated in privacy and then presented to us properly. But that's not President Trump's way. And it has worked for him so far. So be it. But one thing he said yesterday that is of interest to me and perhaps a little bit of concern to me is he said he doesn't give a rat's ass about the midterms. Not in those exact words, doesn't give a rat's a, but here's what he did say. And this is a little bit of a descriptor as well. All of those with the conviction that Iran must not have a pathway to nuclearization are taking heart, because Trump was speaking at the public portion of his cabinet meeting yesterday in which he said that Iran was miscalculating if it thought that he would soften his position to avoid a prolonged standoff in Tehran. Quote, this is the president, they thought they were going to outweight me. He's got the midterms, they thought. Well, I don't care about the midterms. End of quote. Okay? And that's the part that has me concerned. All right? He needs to care about the midterms. He does, because the Democrats are ready to pounce. Obviously, it's extraordinarily important when you think about it. What President Trump said is, I don't care about the midterms. everything that he and we have fought for to try to stop this country from being handed back over to those who facilitate invasions, the Democrats, and those who try to silence citizen journalists, those who try to cancel conservative voices from the public domain, from the public square. They'll take over again. They'll impeach him. They will impeach his Secretary of War, his Secretary of State, his senior advisors, his Chief of Staff or Policy, Stephen Miller. I mean, everything will be gone. He has to care about the midterms to at least a certain extent, because the Democrats, they sure as hell do. So that's a problem in my estimation. We cannot hand this country back to those people 2 years before they would have to claim it again in a presidential election. We cannot give them the Congress. It is that important. So the president said he was rejecting the idea of allowing Iran to turn over its stockpile of enriched uranium to either China or Russia. He said, quote, "That would not make me comfortable. More than 11 tons of uranium enriched at levels up to 20% was shipped to Russia as a part of the now defunct 2015 Obama deal that lifted economic sanctions against Iran." So President Trump basically, this was kind of funny. I don't have this video, but it was just kind of funny here. The president said that the Iranians were beginning to come around at the negotiating table, but he did say he is not ruling out the possibility of additional military strikes. Quote, "If they won't," he said, pointing to Pete Hegseth, "the man on my left is going to finish them off." And then Hegseth, Secretary of War, said, "Yes, the man on the left agrees." So two large points to make there. Number one, the president needs to care about the midterms. But number two, we're no closer to having resolution before the midterms than we were on Saturday. Last Saturday, when we were all given that little, I don't even know what you want to call it. It was a bill of goods that we were being sold that it's almost over. In retrospect, 100%, honest with you, it pisses me off. We were given the, "Hey, it's almost done" again. The headline, do I even have the headline? I might have the headline somewhere nearby. No, maybe not. But the headline was something to the effect of "Deal with Iran imminent, largely negotiated." Those were the two words. It has been largely negotiated, awaiting final approval. Made it sound like finally it's over. Good. Let's get going now. That means Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, which was, of course, point A and the top priority for the president. Hopefully, it also includes Iran not funding their terror proxies to attack Americans or American interests or allies around the globe. And now we can get back to the business of winning the midterms. That was the teaser we got on Saturday. Yesterday, at that same meeting, so just 5 days later till Thursday, yesterday, the president said, "By the way, if some of Iran's neighbors won't cooperate, we'll bomb the out of them too." He talked about Oman in particular. Said we'll just blow them up. So 5 days ago, we're going to get a deal done. It's going to be peace, and then boom, here we are, now, and yeah, we might be blowing more people up. Look, I don't have a problem with blowing people up if that's what it takes to stop a radical regime, especially if those people are the radical, Islamic terrorist supporters in Iran. I have no problem with that. Do it. I also have no problem with them surrendering everything and giving you the nuclear materials that you're talking about. I have no problem with either of those two things. But quit telling us it's one and then the other. Peace is here. We're about to bomb. We're about to bomb. Nope, hold on. We have an agreement almost ready to go. I'm just the whiplash back and forth cannot continue. So that's one thing I wanted to make a point of. And then one more note before we get into the crash, which I want to talk about before we get to Dr. Piper. This is pretty huge as it pertains to those midterms that we were talking about. The redistricting wars, as you know, started in Texas, expanded to California, expanded to Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, all over the place. Blue states trying to redistrict and redraw districts based on race in order to get more Democrats elected. Republican states, red states trying to redraw districts without gerrymandering, just making sure everything is kind of clumped the way it's supposed to be. And following the Supreme Court's rules that say you cannot redistrict by race. That is unconstitutional. Okay. It's a huge, huge deal, and the Democrats know it, which is why they are trying in every way, shape, or form to violate that, despite what the Supreme Court said. But this is a huge, huge story. The Department of Justice, the Trump Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division has filed a challenge to California's electoral maps in the wake of the Supreme Court's Calais decision, the one from Louisiana. Nuts and bolts of the story is according to the complaint filed by the DOJ, Todd Blanche in charge of the DOJ now, but the Civil Rights Division, quote, the Constitution almost never permits a state to discriminate on the basis of race. California nevertheless discriminated on the basis of race when it drew its congressional district lines using race as the predominant factor in order to enhance Hispanic voting power. That's right. Not every racial gerrymander or discussion is centered on blacks. In this case, it was Hispanics because of the massive Hispanic population of California. Specifically, the complaint continues, the United States alleges that in violation of the Equal Protection Clause and Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, quote, race was a predominant factor in drawing the boundaries of at least 16 congressional districts, all of which are Hispanic majority. The complaint alleges extensive direct evidence of race discrimination. The mapmaker, Paul Mitchell, made several public statements confirming that he intentionally and directly used race and Hispanic demographics as criteria in designing the map. Most notably, he publicly boasted that, quote, the number one thing that he first started thinking about was drawing a replacement Latino majority-minority district in the middle of Los Angeles. Several California legislators made public comments evincing their desire to empower Hispanic and Black voters. Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri said, quote, California's mapmaker said his number one thing was increasing the congressional representation of one particular racial group. I'm glad the DOJ is taking California to court. This should be an easy case. Let's get this map thrown out. And I'll tell you what, if they can indeed get that map thrown out, that's phenomenal. If California, which basically responded to Texas by drawing these race-based gerrymandered maps, if those get thrown out, that midterm fight that we're talking about, that midterm, that I just talked about is going to be so hard for us to win with, us at war with Iran and prices being high because of the, energy crunch and the global oil prices and so forth. That midterm might not be as unclimbable of a mountain as we thought, those midterms, plural. It might not be, impossible if we actually get maps drawn even in blue states that are more fair. If the congressional delegation from California is virtually all Democrat in Washington, D.C., for example, it's going to be very, very hard for us to, almost impossible for us to overcome the big number, to have the majority, to have at least 218 votes. If we get that trimmed down in some of those Hispanic and Black leaning districts that were drawn specifically because of race, which is unconstitutional. We're not asking to cheat here. We're asking that cheating be stopped. If those things are changed and those maps are thrown out, they have to go back to the previous maps. Going back to the previous maps in some other states too, and adopting the new maps in which, again, the Democrat snaky gerrymandering type of thing is being wiped out, we might be in a better position than we even thought with respect to the midterm elections. So that's a huge, huge deal. All right. Now, I want to pivot again because I've got Dr. Piper coming up at the top of the hour, and I'm very much looking forward to that conversation, as I'm sure you are as well. But I want to pivot now to the local story of the crash. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. I didn't get a chance to get into it in the depth that I wanted to. And in fact, I asked the chatters, our live stream supporters, if they wanted to do a little bit of homework and watch the crash if you happen to be subscribing to Netflix, which a lot of people do not for a lot of really great reasons, myself as well. I unsubscribed for a long period of time before resubscribing to have access to some things like this. But I wanted to see if anybody, had any thoughts on this. I want to share with you mine. Dylan, if you would, I want to pop up number, where is it? Yeah, number 13 on the screen, please. Number 13. This is a Facebook page called Free Mackenzie Shirilla. Keep that where it was, because I want to read that little description of the page there that now has 22,000 followers. The description is: a girl who was 17 at the time of a horrible accident, convicted of double murder and sentenced to 15 years to life with no real proof. She deserves a retrial. I'm going to assume that it's her mother behind this page. I don't know that for sure, but that is going to be my assumption, that her mother is behind this page, because her mother and her father were exposed in this Netflix special through interviews that they agreed to sit down for to discuss how they raised their daughter. They take no responsibility whatsoever for her actions, no responsibility whatsoever for her lifestyle of smoking weed and cozying up to a drug dealer and being showered with gifts like Prada and Louis Vuitton and Chanel and a 20-year-old with no discernible job who ended up being keep it up, Dylan. A 20-year-old who ended up being one of the actual victims in the case, and in fact was the target of the case, the target of the crime, the boyfriend, whose name is Dominic Russo. They allowed their daughter at 17 to move in and live with Dominic Russo and to live a life again that you just cannot imagine until you watch the documentary and see the actual video evidence of the lifestyle that was being led here. And the parents in this case seem to have absolutely no problem whatsoever with their daughter living life off the chain, living life, posting videos of herself smoking cigar-sized joints every freaking day, celebrating it, mounting her camera to the side window of her car so that she can, while driving, smoke weed and blowing it out and looking into the camera. We're talking about a very, very unhinged, I don't know if that's the right word. I'm trying to find the right word to describe this woman. She's an adult. She was 17 at the time of the crime. She was 18 at the time of arrest and trial, and was appropriately charged for killing her boyfriend and their friend in that crash. She was just unbelievably out of control. And the story that was told by the documentary shows that the parents had no interest whatsoever in controlling her. And that's my most compelling interest in this case and talking about it on this show. It's not as much about the actual murders, but it's about what led to it and what lessons can and should be learned from it. So just for those who don't know the specifics, this is a very, very, very generalized backgrounder I'll give you on it if you don't recall. Mackenzie Shirilla was in a relationship, a toxic one, filled with threats and curses and just some psychological abuse. I think she just tormented that young man who was older than her, by the way. Again, he was 20, she was 17. It was just a toxic relationship, one that was filled with threats of violence in numerous other occasions by Mackenzie Shirilla, who again was this unstable and just completely whacked out on drugs most of the time is a key part of all of this. She threatened to break up with him countless numbers of times. Whenever he talked about breaking up with her, she talked about wanting to kill him. All kinds of things like that were presented in the video or in the documentary, about an hour and a half long. And this is Strongsville, Ohio. This is the reason it should be, on the radar for you if you're watching from Northeast Ohio right now. So, on the night in question, it was 5 o'clock in the morning after a night of partying, smoking weed, and doing the things that they do. Mackenzie Shirilla got in the car, her boyfriend in the passenger seat, their other friend, Donovan Flanagan, in the back seat. Give me something different than that screen. Would you, Dylan, please? I just wanted people to see a little bit more if we can. Thank you. Got in the car, drove them. Supposedly they were driving home from the friend's house where they were partying. And instead she took a turn off of Pearl Road down a street into a very heavily industrial area, industrial businesses. And the video from numerous surveillance cameras show her accelerating that vehicle at 100 miles per hour while navigating a curvy road. So it wasn't as if she was just stoned, and it wasn't as if she passed out. It wasn't as if she had a seizure and wasn't in control of the vehicle. She was hammering at 100 miles an hour while navigating the curves of the road, and then slammed it not directly actually, into that brick wall and that brick building, which killed her boyfriend and her other friend on impact and severely injured her. The reason I say not so directly is if you look at some of the images that Dylan is focusing on right now, as she approached the wall at 100 miles an hour, she jerked the wheel left to make sure that the passenger side got the brunt of the impact. And as you can see, that is exactly what happened. The passenger side virtually disintegrated. The driver's side intact. Does that mean she was not trying to kill herself? No. I still think it was probably murder-suicide, but she was fearful at the end of what it was going to do to her. So just boom, she makes sure that it hits his side more directly. So she was tried as an adult, convicted of 2 counts of murder. And it was gruesome and barbaric, the injuries that were suffered by those individuals. And what was more barbaric is what we learned about Mackenzie Shirilla. So that brings us again to the reason for my discussing this is what kind of parents allow their kids to grow up this way. The interview done in the documentary, conducted by whoever the documentarians were, but these were voluntary interviews. These weren't caught on camera moments of Mackenzie Shirilla's parents. This wasn't like some sort of a secret hidden camera type thing. They sat down for the interview and basically admitted that they let their daughter do whatever the living hell she wanted to do. They covered for her every single time the school called with her being undisciplined, abusive, disrespectful, a constant barrage of messages from the school, Strongsville, to the parents, and the parents showing up every time and covering for her and basically saying, she's Mackenzie, she can do no wrong. The father in the documentary literally said, I showed up, I asked her if she did it, she said no, and he said, good, then the story's over. That I don't need to hear it anymore. Just, my daughter said she didn't do it, therefore she's innocent. That was the kind of absentee, neglectful, undisciplined parenting that I'm talking about here, that I think is far, far more pervasive in our country. Quite frankly, this isn't, specific to Northeast Ohio. This just happened to happen in Northeast Ohio. But yeah, look at that. Thank you, Dylan. I just looked up Dom's side of the car. And do you have the other side? They drive. Well, you can see that in the picture on the left. The driver's side of the car did not take that brunt, that impact. She turned it, even though she was at 100 miles an hour at the last second, she turned it to make sure that his side got got the bulk of the damage. And of course, like I said, he and his friend both. And I don't want to give away too much. You should watch the documentary if you can to see the evidence. They did a fantastic job of going through the forensics. The vehicle has kind of its own version of a black box in an airplane that talks about the specifics of what was going on inside the car from an operational standpoint. It could tell, and it recorded, that brakes were not applied even once during that fateful sprint down that side road into the building. She did not ever think about braking. This was 100% intentional. It also showed the quote unquote black box, if you will, showed that not only were the brakes not applied whatsoever, the car had been put into neutral and then quickly put back into drive in the middle of that run, which indicates what? It indicates that one of the victims, who were probably freaking out, screaming at her to stop, slow down, had reached up to put the car into neutral to try to stop it, only to be overtaken by her putting it back into drive so that she could finish this run. It's a question, it's an issue of parents, not just being parents in name, but being parents in action, or parents being neglectful in ways that, again, you have to see to believe. Listen to them yourself in that documentary. And as much as it might violate everything sensible that you have in you to actually subscribe to Netflix, which is co-owned by Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and which features some absolutely horrific programming, some of this is very eye-opening. And yeah, it is must watch. That's a good video there. And what's really, and she sat down for an interview from the jailhouse, and she had to make sure that her earrings and her hair was just right as well. I mean, this is a picture of evil, honestly. And I don't really know any other words to use for her, but she is still being defended by her friends. She is still being defended by her mother, who I think contributed to this horrific situation. That webpage that we showed you a few minutes ago, free Mackenzie Shirilla, give her a new trial. She was 17 when it happened, 18 when she was charged. She only got 15 years for each murder. She only got 15, and the judge, who could have given her 30 to life for each of those, not only did she choose the 15, she also decided to make the sentences concurrent rather than consecutive, guaranteeing that she serves at least 30 years. So as it stands, she could be out at around the age of 32 and then go on to live a normal life, which she tried to live after murdering those two young men in that car. That's what they also showed videos of her going to a party as a corpse, for crying out loud, going to a Halloween party dressed in one of those dead, outfits along with her friends, just living her life as if nothing ever happened when she murdered those two young men. It is just a terrible tale, and it's sad that it happened right here in Northeast Ohio. This became a Strongsville story that became a national story, and now it is an international story on Netflix called The Crash. Like I said, if you can see yourself to finding a way to watch it, and maybe just buy a temporary subscription to Netflix, watch it, and then delete it again if that's what you want to do. Like I said, I have no problem with that. I've boycotted products and companies and services for less. But watch this one, because this one does expose the dangers of parents that are just apologetic for every single thing their little angels do, that are absentee parents, that are fine to let their 17-year-old child move in with a 20-year-old drug dealer boyfriend, knowing that the two of them are doing everything but living productive, young, healthy lives. It's a story about our culture and our society. Not everybody is going to have a child that is I think, evilly driven. But I do think that parental input, parental interference in radical lifestyles can make a big, big difference. And that's the story I want you to take away from The Crash. All right. And if you're on Facebook too, take a look at that webpage, and you will see comment after comment after comment of some of the lunatic fringe that absolutely think she was railroaded. Think that she could not have, despite all of the evidence that the documentary painstakingly goes through, and that I just very superficially gave you a view of, despite all of that evidence suggesting that she actually was railroaded by the system. That Free Mackenzie Shirilla website is just incredible. You've got to read some of the comments in it. Okay, we have breached the 8 o'clock hour. That means I need to tell you about one of our fantastic partners and sponsors, and I want to tell you about our friend, the politically incorrect mechanic, Charlie Kalani. Charlie runs Charlie's Auto Repair and has been doing it in Lakewood for about 20 years, and he has a phenomenal business model, and that is fix people's cars the right way and don't rip them off. What a unique concept, because sadly, in the automotive repair world, that's unique. Because too many of them are going to fudge the amount of hours that it took them to fix and charge you another hour of labor. They're going to trust that you don't know a doggone thing about what's under the hood. They're going to tell you parts that need to be replaced that don't exist, or that are perfectly fine but need to be replaced because they say so, and you're going to end up with a bigger bill. Look, Charlie isn't that way. Charlie is MAGA. Charlie is America First. Charlie's a patriot through and through who treats people right. If you can find a mechanic to fix your car when it's broken or maintain it when it's going well, and who isn't going to rip you off, cling to that person. All right, stick with that mechanic. The lot is always full, so you're going to want to call for your appointment. 216-470-0170. He calls himself the politically incorrect mechanic, by the way, because liberals hate his politics, and he doesn't care. He's going to tell it the way it is. Like I said, MAGA and America First. Not only will he not overcharge you, he'll undercharge you 10%. 10% discount for first responders, military veterans, active military, and concealed carry license holders. You fit one of those bills, you get the 10% discount from Charlie's Auto Repair. 216-470-0170. Again, 216-470-0170. Charlie's Auto Repair. He will make your car great again. All right. Like I said, top of the hour has been breached, and that means it's time to welcome in our regular Thursday guest and friend, Dr. Everett Piper, joining us from Oklahoma. There we go. Thank you. From Oklahoma, Dr. Piper, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Bob. You doing well?
I am just fine, I guess, under the circumstances. You know, we're in a weird spot right now nationally. Dr. Piper, you and I haven't talked about things like Iran and the war. We talk a little bit about elections, but we don't talk, about those two things together. And I want to get into your column in a minute here. But one of my lead stories this morning that I have been discussing is the president's statement yesterday. And maybe it's because he's playing that proverbial 5D chess that we hear about all the time. But the president yesterday at the cabinet meeting, in the public portion of the cabinet meeting, told the press that if Iran thinks that he is going to be hurried into a bad deal, because the midterms are coming, then they've got another thing coming. He said, because I don't give a damn about it. Well, his quote was, I don't care about the midterms. I like that from a messaging standpoint to the Iranians, because he's willing to do this right rather than to do this fast. But I don't like this from the messaging standpoint to us, because I need him to care about the midterms, because if we lose the midterms, we lose the country. Dr. Piper, any thoughts?
Well, I recognize the anxiety that we feel because of the polls right now. What Trump's approval rating is 40% or less. Last I checked, is it under 40? I think it is, Bob. I think
depends on which one. Yeah, it depends on which poll, but yeah.
Okay. That's not good for the midterms. We recognize the division within the right, within the conservative movement. I don't think there's a great deal of division within MAGA itself. In fact, the polls I've been checking show that those who identify boldly, proudly as MAGA have stayed loyal to Trump. So I don't think you're peeling off a lot of MAGA voters. I think the risk here is peeling off your son's generation, my son's generation, those voters that voted Republican, voted quote unquote MAGA the last time, but they don't like what they have to pay for gasoline when they're filling up their car right now. Okay, I'm regurgitating things we know. So back to your question. Should Trump care about the midterms? Of course he should, and he does. Should we panic because he just says he said that? I don't think so. I don't think we should panic because he said that. What was he supposed to say? Well, yeah, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to soft shoe this one. I'm willing to compromise more than I should because the GOP needs to hold the majority in the midterms. Of course, he's not going to say that. You know that. I know that. That's not your point. The point is, the reason you feel anxious, I feel anxious, and every other conservative with half a brain feels anxious right now is there's a lot of truth in what you just said. If we lose the midterms, our country's in deep, deep trouble. So more to the point, if the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate, here's what's going to happen. The pendulum is going to swing back so aggressively the other direction. You know, people have been celebrating the fact that LGBTQIA, trans lunacy, DEI, critical theory, global warming, climate change nonsense. People have been celebrating, oh, it's all dead. That stuff's all over. That's all behind us. And I've been saying all along, I hate to be a naysayer. I hate to be pessimistic on this one, but garbage nonsense. That stuff is not over. Any time a Democrat gets power, whether it be in your local community as a city council member, a county commissioner, whether it be your governor, whether it be your senator, or whether it be your president, anytime a Democrat gains power right now, they have shown their true cards. They are swinging so hard the other direction right now with these idiots that are now being elevated to the leadership of their party. That's what we should be afraid of. That's what we should be concerned about, is the craziness of Tallarico, the craziness of AOC, the craziness of the mayor of Seattle, the craziness of the governor of Virginia. The list goes on and on and on. The craziness of New York City and Mamdani and the politics there. What we're seeing right now is the Democrats are going full-on Marxist. Now, you've known this and I've known this for decades. This has been their ideology. This has been their agenda. But every time we've said something, you know, real aggressive and real clear that Democrats are going to lead us to essentially the Red Guard of Mao, where they're going to lead us to the point where schools are going to have the right to castrate our children without telling us that they did so. They're going to completely demolish the meaning and the importance of marriage. Bergefeld wasn't the point. They don't want marriage to matter anytime, anywhere for anyone. The definition of marriage in and of itself is in jeopardy. When we said any of that stuff, in other words, ideas have consequences. They're going to lead somewhere. And these bad ideas of the Democrats are going to lead us into anarchy. And then anarchy is going to be solved by tyranny. And the tyranny is going to be solved by somebody who's waving the big, bold fist, uplifted fist of Marxism. When we said that, we were laughed at, we were mocked, we were maligned and ridiculed. Well, wake up, people. Here we are. That's what's going on. The Democrats are full on nuts on this stuff right now. They are Marxists. They're telling you this. They're not hiding the ball any longer. And therefore, if you're anywhere near the line as to whether or not to get engaged in the upcoming election and to vote for the lesser of two evils, fine. Welcome to the human race. You're going to have to vote for the lesser of two evils. And if you think the Democrats are less evil, if you're like Bill Kristol, for example, and you're leaning Democrat, or you're boldly saying that you're a Democrat now, if that's where you are, you've lost your ever-loving mind and you don't care about human freedom. You don't care about dignity. You don't care about the future of your children and grandchildren. You don't care. You're basically doing the exact same thing that the mindless lemmings of Marxism have done for over 100 years now, since it's been marching across the world stage.
You know, Dr. Piper, since you bring that up that way, let's go a little deeper into their Marxism, their socialism, their communism. Graham Plattner, we talked a little bit about him before, I think, but he was on tour this past weekend and was on Memorial Day weekend. He was with Bernie Sanders, and they were out there just pulling back the curtain on collectivism, Marxism, socialism, so forth, everything that they believe in, stripping everything away from the quote unquote oligarchs, the quote unquote billionaires and so forth, to be taken in and then applied to programs that they will control and pass out to all of those who are, you know, on the short side of the wealth gap. They're doing this, by the way, with a guy in my yesterday or Tuesday's show. I was talking about how weird it is that the Democrats have managed to pull off this rare double. They've managed to be both on the far right side of the spectrum with fascism, because of Graham Plattner, by the way, and his Nazi tattoo, and also on the far left side of the spectrum with their communism and Marxism for all of the things we're talking about right now. Somehow, some way, they've managed to be evil in two equal and opposite ways. But here they are. Graham Plattner is being celebrated. They are circling the wagons around him. They know that his message is communist in nature. We all know that Bernie and AOC and Katie Wilson and a host of other Democrats who are prominent are proud DSA members, meaning Democratic Socialists of America. They're not even hiding it anymore, especially like I said, when they start to lift this Graham Plattner guy up for the Senate.
Well, they're not. And broken record here, we shouldn't be surprised. We've seen this element of the Democrat Party for a long time. It's been there. And we've known what they were doing. They didn't care about equality. They even stopped talking about equality, and they started talking about in terms of equity. They were constantly moving the ball, moving the target. Barack Obama told us that he was going to fundamentally change America, fundamentally transform America, and he did. And they've been celebrating that movement and doing it basically boldly, without much disguise, ever since the election of Barack Obama. You could argue even earlier, but I think that was one of the real tipping points, where people, because we wanted to be good people, we wanted to be nice, we wanted to be open and inclusive. All of those words are good words to some extent. Being open, inclusive, wanting to be nice and affirming, wanting to vote for somebody that doesn't look like you necessarily. Those are all good things. That's part of what makes America America, is not being a racist, not being closed-minded, not being exclusive to the extent that you don't think anybody else is welcome in your club or welcome in your neighborhood or welcome in your home. It's the Christian thing to do, the American thing to do, is to be a welcoming and a loving person. So we vote for Barack Obama as a majority in the United States, and I think that's the reason. I think a lot of people voted for him because of that. Well, we've got the opportunity to vote for a Black president. We celebrated that, and what happened? Exactly what we told the conservatives told you all would happen. The man had a communist agenda. The man had a Marxist background. The man told you he's going to fundamentally change America, not for the good, but for the bad. And then he starts fomenting racism. He starts fomenting division. He starts being exclusive rather than inclusive. He starts not tolerating those that he finds intolerable, and he does it under the banner of tolerance. I mean, the list goes on and on and on in terms of
Love when you do that.
Hypocrisy of who he was, and that's where we are today. I think he exposed the underbelly of the American electorate that for decades we have been teaching our students, our progeny, to hate America and to lean into these ideas. And the chickens come home to roost. Barack Obama's pastor was right. Not in the way he was using it in terms of goddamn America. That's what he was saying. The chickens are going to come home to roost. I'm sorry to use that language, people, but I'm not saying it for myself. That's a direct quote from Barack Obama's pastor in a sermon he delivered in that church in Chicago. He was calling upon God to literally damn America because they hate America. And we elected a president who was educated under and converted under this pastor's leadership. And then all of a sudden we're shocked and chagrined and stunned that things go the way they are. No, we got what we deserved. So the point here is you need to care about the midterms, people. You need to care about them, and you need to encourage everybody in your circle of influence, social media and whatnot, to care about the midterms. I will vote, and I will vote aggressively and proudly for Donald Trump and the Republicans. Why? Because I'm a blind loyalist? Absolutely not. There are a lot of things I disagree with there. And if you disagree with the war in Iran, whatever. Do you want the Democrat Party to have control over your life, over your house, over your economy, over your faith, over your religion, over your schools, over your children? Do you want Democrats to have power and control over all those things? Are you that crazy to do that? If you are, you need to just wake up and recognize what you're doing. I've been very critical of Donald Trump at times. Some of your listeners, Bob, have probably been uncomfortable when I've said, I don't like this. Frankly, I think he's right on the war in Iran. I think to claim—
I do too.
If If you can't pay $4 a gallon for gas for a little while, I'm sorry. Some people are saying, "Oh, well, that's easy for you, Piper. You're retired. You've got enough money." Well, I've got enough money because I worked hard and I saved it and I planned for circumstances such as this. I don't have a great deal of wealth. The financial independence that I may have to some extent is because of the American work ethic. Point is, and am I willing to suffer a little bit for the sake of stopping an evil regime that has said for 50 years at least that they want to kill us? Yes, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for gas for a while. And I'm sorry for those of you who are younger than me and you have less resources than me. I think you need to scrape a few dimes together and pay for your gasoline for a little while. Read Cal Thomas's article in the Washington Times this last week. He said, "Stop whining." He said, "Your great grandparents sacrificed a heck of a lot more than $4 a gallon for gas to give you the freedom that you're now enjoying. So stop your whining and recognize that had we not stopped Iran from having a nuclear bomb, we would be suffering a lot more right now than $4 a gallon." So there are a lot of things on the table for the midterms.
I don't want to spoil anything because tomorrow I've got an interview with Claire Lopez scheduled, and she is a Middle East and Iranian expert in particular. And Claire is going to talk about the real threat of the Iran nuclear agenda, and which is why I agree. It's not just why, but it's more support for both of our support for the Iran war and what we're doing here. But this isn't just about, we hate the West. We hate the West. So we're going to get a nuke and we're going to bomb the West. And we hate Israel. So we're going to get a nuke and we're going to nuke, Israel off the map. It's much, much, much more deep than just that sort of international, disagreement and culture. The regime that's in charge of Iran, again, without doing too much spoiler stuff here, the regime that's in charge of Iran right now believes that the day is coming, the end of days. And at the end of days, the 12th Imam will appear. And that 12th Imam will lead Islam into control of the entire world. And they all believe this very, very dearly and sincerely. And the belief is that they can hasten the end of days by what? Nuclear
bombing
apocalypse.
us
By nuclear exactly, a nuclear apocalypse.
Exactly.
That would lead to the end of days. Here comes the 12th Imam hastening what they all want, which is Sharia law rule over the entire world. Because this isn't a religion as much as it is an ideology and a political force where they want massive power and nothing to stop them. So Claire is such a wonderful, detailed historian on this issue, and she's going to tell us tomorrow. But the point being, when you look at it from that standpoint, you'll understand exactly how driven the Iranians are to getting this nuclear, bomb, and which is why President Trump has to play the hardball game here and say we can't even leave them with the quote unquote nuclear dust or the nuclear, remnants of what is left. We cannot give them any opportunity because they are not playing the short game. They're playing the long game here. And if we try to cut it short for the purposes of political expediency, like the midterms, like we talked about, then we're going to be in trouble. Like I said, and you said, I'm willing to do that, to make that sacrifice in the service of the longer peace and the stoppage of, Iran's long range plans. But it's just hard for people who don't know the depth of this to hear the president say things like, I don't care about the midterms. Because if he doesn't care about the midterms and that message gets to enough, complacent conservative ears where they might sit this thing out and it's not important for them to turn out because the president says it doesn't matter. That's my concern from a political perspective. Final thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, Bob. I probably am not as anxious about him saying that as what you're implying. And the reason is this: what else is he supposed to say when he's in a negotiating mode with an enemy who is hell-bent in killing us? He has to say that. So that's the way I hear him.
I don't blame him for saying it either, just to be clear, Dr. Piper. I just want to make sure that ears here receive it correctly. They need to know of course he does care. And of course he wants his full agenda to be implemented over the 4 years of his term. He doesn't want to give power to that. Of course he cares. He needs to say this for the purposes of Iran, not telling you not to care and not telling you we don't need you to come out there in force. If there's any question about his commitment to the midterms, look at his endorsement string that he's on. He is on a run of biblical proportions in terms of here's who I endorse, here's who won in all of these primaries. So of course he cares. I just want to make sure it's being received properly.
And that's why you're doing this show. That's why you're saying what you're saying right now. You're saying, hey, folks, don't get distracted here. This is a negotiating strategy, one that he should employ. Obviously, he can't say anything else, and he shouldn't say anything else. And frankly, you might want to take it very seriously. You might want to listen to what he just said. What we're facing right now in terms of the potential of Iran or someone like Iran having a nuclear weapon, it would be catastrophic, not only to our politics in the United States, but to humanity, to the human race, to freedom across the globe. And in that context, I don't care about the midterms because this is an evil regime that needs to be stopped. That's what he just said. Now, does that mean he doesn't care about you voting? No, he's saying you should vote. You should be even more concerned about what's going on. You should run to the voting booth to vote, because if the Democrats gain power and control, they're going to unleash this kraken, this evil, this monster on the United States, on Israel, and on the world. So you better care. So he's saying it, but he's also saying what you just said and what I just said. So, hey, people, you need to get out and vote for the lesser of two evils. And if you think that Republican candidate, as compromised as that Republican candidate may be, and a lot of them are, I hold my nose and I think, what is wrong with you? But because they're aligned with a party that's trying to stop some of this garbage, Iran, translunacy, butchering your kids, terrible public schools, the terrible fiscal policy, the list goes on and on. The lunacy of global warming and climate change and the lie and the way they're trying to control your lives through that particular agenda. If you want to vote for the Democrat Party that believes in all that crap, and if you think that's better than the Republican, the compromised Republican that's on the ballot in your local community, your state, then I don't know. What are you doing? What are you reading? What are you thinking in terms of human dignity, human responsibility, the freedom of parents to raise their children as they wish, the freedom to go to church and not worry about the government penalizing you for the church that you support and give to and attend? I mean, these things are real issues right now that you need to care about. You need to vote accordingly. And you need to vote against Iran having a nuclear weapon.
Since you brought up some of that, this isn't our primary, none of this has been our primary topic. I want to get to your article in a moment here, but I want to talk about one race now that we have it set. Ken Paxton just beat John Cornyn a little bit to the south of you down there in Texas. Ken Paxton just beat John Cornyn for the Senate nomination for the Republican Party, and he's going to be facing off with a guy you and I have talked about a little bit already when he beat Jasmine Crockett. Low bar there, but James Tallarico is a dangerous, dangerous human being. And I don't want to go through all of it again, but I just wanted to ask your opinion of this race now, because there are a lot of Republicans who are concerned that they're going to have to pour a lot more money into Ken Paxton's race than they would have with Cornyn, who was a proven winner in Texas, obviously, as a two-term senator. And Paxton brings some baggage that they said they're going to have to spend a lot of money to overcome the attack ads the Democrats will use on him in support of Tallarico. Meanwhile, Tallarico is already starting to walk back some of the stuff you and I have talked about that he has said, and you wrote about too. You know, his belief in 6 different genders and his belief that God is not a male nor a female. God is non-binary. He, as a preacher, he has said these things. He is about as radical as the left can come up with. And that's saying something, knowing that they came up with Zoran Mamdani and Graham Plattner. This guy might be worse than either of them. So But now he's trying to walk some of that back in order to reach, Texas voters who are notoriously, obviously conservative, or at the very, very least, right of center. Thoughts on how that race is going to play out now?
I was listening to a guy yesterday. I can't remember his name. He was a pollster. He was featured on some show I was listening to. And I assume I think he was legitimate. I don't think he was fly-by-night operation. And he said, yeah, the polls are really tight right now. But he was very optimistic. He said, there is no way when people learn who James Tallarico is, that he's anti-beef. Okay, Texas, anti-beef. Okay.
He's a vegan, right? He's a vegan, I think. He says nobody should be eating meat. Yeah.
Big time. One of his positions, one of his sermons is that we need to have legislation that protects our animal friends. Okay. Hey, I love animals. I love my horses. I love my dogs.
I do too. I do too with the little A1, not the dogs or the horses.
Candidly, people, it even breaks my heart. I hate it when I have to load up one of my steers and take him to the butcher. I don't like it. I'm not, and I quit hunting years ago because I just don't enjoy the kill. Now, does that mean I don't eat meat? No. Does that mean I'm going to start legislating that you have to be a vegan? No. Am I going to give animals the equal rights that human beings have? And blur the distinction between what it means to be a person and what it means to be a horse? No, I'm not going to do that. So Tallarico is doing all of that, folks. Tallarico doesn't want you to be able to eat a hamburger. Okay. Tallarico doesn't want you to be able to own a gun. Tallarico doesn't want you to be able to tell the school what to teach your kids. Okay. Tallarico's church actually distributes books describing the homosexual act, okay, to teach children what it means to be gay. Okay, this is all a fact. Tallarico says that Jesus never speaks to the issue of abortion, therefore he's for it. He actually uses the Annunciation. Okay, when Gabriel comes to Mary and announces to Mary that the Holy Spirit is going to come over her and that she's going to conceive a child, and that child is going to be the Son of God, the second person of the triune God, the Savior of the world. Tallarico uses that biblical story to say that that was a consensual sexual act. Okay. There's something wrong with this guy. This guy is a theological monster, and he is a social and moral nut job. Don't be deceived by his clean-cut, all-American look. This man is Barack Obama 2.0. He really is. He's got a cadence about the way he speaks and communicates that if you close your eyes, you'd swear you're listening to Barack Obama. He knows how to communicate. He knows how to spin. He knows how to dance. And frankly, and I'm going to pick on the evangelical community right now, my church, my stripe, my particular distinction within the body of Christ. We're getting what we deserve on this one, people, because our churches have been teaching fuzziness, mushiness, indistinct theological crap for decades. And this is what we produce. We produce guys who actually use the Bible to justify abortion. We produce guys that actually use the Bible to justify transing your children. We produce guys that actually tell you that there's no distinction between a human being, a horse, a cat, a pig, or a cow. Somebody who's parroting the nonsense of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, who said this decades ago. There's no distinction between a boy, a cat, a dog, or a pig. In other words, a human being is no better or no worse than the pig that had to die to give you the bacon or to give you the ham you're consuming. That's PETA's position, and this is Tallarico's position, and he's running for office in Texas. So back to the positive part about my response, Bob. This pollster that I was listening to said there is no way when people learn who Tallarico is that they're going to vote for a guy who's pro-transing your kids, doesn't want you to eat beef, will take away your guns, and actually tells you that God is queer. There ain't no way there's not a, I'll quote the old axiom, there's not a snowball's chance in Texas of people voting for Tallarico over Paxton. That's what the pollster says. That aside, and I think he's probably right, that aside, because Oklahoma is very similar to Texas in terms of our social political attitude on things. That aside, people need to take this election very seriously, because right now, Tallarico and Paxton are polling neck and neck. In fact, some of the betting odds are just shifted toward Democrat Tallarico winning in November versus the Republican because of Paxson's baggage, whatever it may be.
That race was considered to be likely Republican when it was thought to be Cornyn against Tallarico. It has dropped down to leaning Republican. So that just to kind of put that in the vernacular that people understand. And the second thing is too, while I want to believe what you saw is correct with that guest on that other show, ain't no way. I want to believe that's the case. Ted Cruz, who is much more beloved in Texas than I think Ken Paxton, at least at this point in time, Ted Cruz had a close call with Beto O'Rourke last time around. He only beat him by like 2 or 3 points. So Texas, as you know, has become a victim of the blue exodus from California and some other blue states where the taxes are too high. In other words, everything is too Democrat. So the Democrats are leaving their Democrat states to come to a red state and then turning it Democrat. So there's a lot more blue voters in Texas than there used to be. So, I'm not taking this for granted. I will say that the fact that Tallarico is now trying to pull some of these things back and was asked in an interview about, you said that there are 6 genders, and he changed it to no, I know there are just 2 gender or 2 sexes. There are male and female, but there are a whole host of people with other conditions or whatever, and they all should be treated with respect. So he's trying to pull some of the declaratives that he had made back, including God as well. Because of what you just said, because, if you're going to try to get through in Texas, you're going to have to give Texans something here. And so he's trying to go back a little bit, but hey, we should not take it for granted and just assume Texas is the reddest of red states like it used to be, because it has absorbed a whole lot of blue over the years.
Oh, there's no question. And the optimistic spin that I just gave you in my previous response shouldn't be taken as anything other than what you just said. I'm not saying anybody should take anything for granted at any place in the United States right now, because what it really comes down to is we're a 50-50 split country and culture, regardless of where you live, whether it's Ohio, Oklahoma, or Texas. It's a 50-50 split. Oh, it might be 51-48. It might be 52-48, 51-49. It might be a split of that, but essentially it's a half and a half split. And in Texas, you have Houston, you have Dallas, you have Fort Worth, you have Austin. They're all liberal bastions that are being heavily influenced by illegal immigrants. Okay, number one, terrible public schools, and the ongoing brainwashing of American culture to think that progressivism is a better solution to whatever ails you than a conservative agenda. That's just a fact that exists in our culture. And the watering down of objective truth, the watering down of what it means to be a human being. I think one of the greatest problems we face as a culture right now, Bob, is we've degraded what it even means to be human. We don't believe a unborn child, a preborn child, is a human being, dignity that deserves the dignity and respect of any other human being. That just because of where they're located and their age somehow gives us the right to kill them. I mean, what drives that? We dumb down the definition of what it means to be a human being. The LGBTQ agenda, the trans agenda, we dumb down the definition of what it means to be a human being to where we start identifying ourselves with nothing but our inclinations. Our personhood is the equivalent of our passions and our desires. That's crazy. That's nuts. That's what we're doing right now. We want to dumb down the definition of what it means to be a human, be a person, and whether it be Texas, whether it be Columbus, Ohio, or Cleveland, Ohio, people have bought the lie. So yeah, we need to take it very seriously, because half of the folks that you live with, interact with, half of the folks in your family probably are leaning to the progressive side of this conversation. That all the more reason for you to take the midterms seriously and get out there and vote, because you could lose Texas if you don't. And you're going to have somebody like Tallarico, who he can reel it back, whatever he wants, he can reel it back. But do you honestly believe he didn't mean what he said? And you need to watch their language too. He says, well, yeah, there are only 2 sexes. He says sexes because sex is different than gender in his mind. You may think sex and gender means the same thing, synonymous terms. No, that's not what Tallarico and his tribe believe. Sex, yes. He's
Yeah,
twisting, he's manipulating, he's dancing, and he's getting you distracted with what he really believes and what he really means. That's
exactly right. And he knows what he has to do, obviously, to convince people. And I've got another headline here that's totally separate from this, but this it underscores the point. Blue states starting to curb free healthcare to migrants. That's the headline. The sub headline is as budgets spin out of control. So these blue states who have been all for giving free healthcare and free welfare and so forth to illegal aliens are now starting to pull that back. They're saying because of budgets. No, it's because the agenda is on the ballot in the midterms. All of these blue states and all of these blue state representatives and so forth know that if they continue the all free stuff for illegal aliens while the American people are struggling in whatever way that they are, it's going to crush them. It's going to hurt them. So they're pulling that back now and saying, yeah, we're not giving free stuff to, and free healthcare to the illegal aliens. There you go. That's the story. So, it's a big deal. Tallarico pulling back, blue states pulling back. That's not what they believe. It's just timed up. And the person who sent me that link, I responded saying, strike the budget spin out of control as the reason for them pulling back their stand, their policies of giving stuff to illegals. It's because the midterms are 6 months away, now 5 months away, really. And that's what Tallarico is trying to pull. That's what they're trying to pull.
It's a lie. They're not going to do it. Bottom line, it's a lie.
100%. I want to take a short time out here to thank one of our sponsors, and then I want to come back and talk about your most recent column. Watch. If you're on Medicare and ever find yourself confused by your coverage, you're not alone. Medicare can be complicated, and the wrong information or no information at all can cost you time, money, and peace of mind. Hey, it's Bob France. For a Medicare professional I know and trust, Mark King. I've known Mark for years, and I've confidently referred Medicare recipients to him time and time again because he puts people first and explains Medicare in plain English. Mark takes the time to help you understand how Medicare works, what coverage you have, and what options might be available based on your needs. There's no pressure, no confusion, and no rushed decisions. Just honest guidance from someone who's been doing this for nearly 40 years and who knows this system inside and out. If you're unsure about your doctors, your prescriptions, or your overall coverage, Mark is the go-to guy you need. Call 440-832-8936 to get an appointment. That's 440-832-8936. And for user-friendly information, visit keepingmedicaresimple.com. I trust Mark King for answers, and you can too. All right, continuing now with Dr. Everett Piper. Dylan, throw up Dr. Piper's most recent column, please, because I want to talk a little bit about this. It's funny you mentioned my son and your son and their generation a short while ago, Dr. Piper. They're in that Gen Z range. The millennials and the Gen Zers, though, as you write, need a history lesson because youthful certainty can become dangerous political manipulation. This was a great read. I enjoyed this when you sent it to me a few days ago, but let's talk a little bit about the dangers of who they're following. Young people in particular, and the Pied Pipers, plural, I guess, that they are following right now, and the path that it might lead them down.
Well, in the article, I'm making the argument, and I know I'm probably going to get some reaction from your listeners in your son's age group, my son's age group, or maybe even the millennials that precede them. We're going to say, you sound like Paul Newman sitting on the front porch screaming at the neighborhood kids to get off his lawn. Okay, fine, whatever, whatever. Try.
I'm okay with that. I don't want them on my doggone lawn either. So just so you know.
Okay. I get it. I'm not oblivious to the fact that some in subsequent age groups, generations that follow me, are going to raise an eyebrow at this piece. But I'm going to say it anyway, because the fact is you're being manipulated. You're being manipulated politically and socially by those that know they can manipulate you. And I'm trying to get you to wake up and recognize that you should think and not just react to an argument that might offend a little bit by saying, okay, boomer. If somebody says, okay, boomer to me one more time, I'm going to reach through the phone and I'm going to slap your adolescent your adolescent rear end. I mean, it's just ridiculous to try to refute somebody's argument or somebody's position by calling them a name. It's an ad hominem attack. Learn a little bit about your freshman level philosophy 101 and Socratic logic. Trying to dispute an Everett Piper or Bob Franz or anybody else by suggesting that Piper's a boomer. Or what generation are you, Bob? Are you a boomer? No, you're not a boomer.
I'm Gen X. I'm at the tail end of Gen X. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm at the tail end of boomer. Okay. You're at the tail end of X. Refuting your position, Bob, because you're older than the person who's arguing with you is nonsense. It's ridiculous. It doesn't have anything to do with age. It has everything to do with truth. So is the argument legitimate or isn't it? Argue from that context, people. Don't just reflexively respond with the ad hominem, the label, the name, okay, boomer. I hate that response. Am I offended by it? Yeah, I'm offended by it. The Pied Pipers that are leading you right now, whether they be on the right like Nick Fuentes or whether they be on the left like AOC, they're both doing the same thing. They're encouraging you to just respond emotionally rather than to think logically and rationally. And the stuff goes on and on and on. If I challenge climate change, global warming, and I say, well, AOC's position and Al Gore's position has been proven to be false, all of the data points in the opposite direction, we need to start listening to some critical minds like John Stossel and others and listen to what they're saying rather than just buying this garbage, because Florida isn't underwater. Mount Kilimanjaro still has snow on it. The glaciers haven't disappeared. Polar bears are better off now than they were 20 years ago. All of the predictions of Al Gore did not come true. So because they didn't come true, there might be a better explanation for weather patterns than what AOC and Al Gore are suggesting. When somebody like me says that, don't just say, okay, boomer. Think about it. Read the data. Consider the argument and whether or not it makes sense. When I say that if you want to follow the science, you might want to admit that there's a biological scientific definition for what it means to be a female and a male, your response shouldn't be, okay, boomer. You might want to think, yeah, biology is a science. Physiology is a science. DNA and genetics are scientific discussions. And all of those things tell us that there's a difference between a man and a woman, a male and female, a boy and a girl. And to have our schools teaching the opposite, and Tallarico's saying, well, there are multiple different genders, there are 6 genders, it's garbage, it's nonsense. It is anti-scientific, it's not scientific. My point is, all of this okay boomer stuff, this ageism, what C.S. Lewis called chronological snobbery, which is a great thing for you to read up on, folks. Chronological snobbery is assuming that your ideas, your thinking, just because it's new, is better than everything that is old. That's nonsense. That's garbage, because the old ideas that we're still talking about today, by definition, are still being talked about. They're still around because they've stood the test of time. They've endured. They've conserved themselves. Conservatism is respecting those things that have endured the test of time and trying to preserve them because they probably matter. They've been around a while. They haven't just popped up 5 minutes ago, and they aren't in vogue because of popularity. Conservative ideas are in vogue because they've been proven. There's a difference between popularity and proven. So, but this has all happened before. And the history lesson that I'm trying to get people to wake up to, the poster child for this, in my mind, is the Red Guard of Mao. Now, people may forget this. Mao was in political crisis at the time that he empowered the Red Guard. He had political opponents within the communist movement, and he knew that he needed to win if he was going to exercise full control over China. So Mao was shrewd enough to recognize that all of these 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds out in the street that were idealists and were easily manipulated could be used to his advantage. So he empowered the Red Guard. All of these kids that went throughout China, actually putting dunce caps on their teachers and their grandparents and their parents, maligning them and imprisoning them for disagreeing with I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Just literal ones. I want people to understand that. I mean, literal dunce caps to kind of brand them and mock them.
Yes. So what did Mao do? He empowered millions of these kids to do his political will. He manipulated them to suppress and oppress and actually imprison and kill his political opposition. It was called the Red Guard. It was called the Cultural Revolution. They were actually imprisoning people simply for having eyeglasses, because eyeglasses were a symbol of intelligence, if not wealth, or both. So if you had glasses, they would arrest you, put a dunce cap on you, and accuse you of being the enemy rather than being part of the solution. Being stupid, okay, boomer, rather than someone who had learned some lessons throughout their lives, been around the block a time or two, and might have some wisdom to bring to the table. My point, Bob, is this: the smarter than thou influencers like AOC on the left and like Nick Fuentes on the right, and even Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, etc., the smarter than thou influencers are missing the point. Millions of these young people were used by Mao for his political agenda. And then what did he do with them at the end? This is the part that a lot of people forget. Mao recognized how dangerous they were. So once he had eliminated his political opposition, he had consolidated his power through the use of millions of young people. He then marched them off, the young people off, to the rice paddies, and they either bowed the knee in submission to his political will, or they died in hard labor out in the rural communities, the rice paddies of China. That's what happened to the kids. So I disagree with Bill Maher on a lot of stuff, but on this issue of ageism, chronological snobbery, Bill Maher has several episodes and monologues where he talks about the kids these days. And he says it with a smile, self-deprecating smile. But he's basically saying the same thing that I'm saying right now. You need to recognize that chronological snobbery, ageism, assuming something is wrong just because it's older than you, someone is wrong just because they're older than you, or an idea is bad just because it's not as recent as your idea, is crazy talk. Because George Santayana said, if you don't learn the lessons of history, which are older ideas, older events, older things, if you don't learn the lessons of the older stuff that preceded you, you're going to be doomed to repeat those ideas. You're going to do the same stupid things. And I love this quote from G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton comes along in the early 1900s, and he says, the old man is always wrong, and the young people are always wrong about what is wrong with him. Chesterton was nicknamed the Prince of Paradox. And there's a reason for that. Now, somebody challenged me, a young person challenged me on that quote and said, well, you're missing the quote. You're misapplying the quote. Chesterton just said the old man is always wrong. He's being facetious. He's being sarcastic. He's saying the old man is always wrong in the minds of the young people who are always wrong about what's always wrong with the old man. He's using a paradox here. And this young 30-something that challenged me on my use of that is apparently so illiterate, not that he can't read, but he's so illiterate in terms of Chesterton's use of paradox and logic that he can't even see it for what it is. He's been so brainwashed in his paradigm that he can't even see what a paradox is.
That's and by the way, just tell everybody what I responded to you when you sent me your column list this past week via text.
You responded, okay, boomer.
not bad for a boomer. And you know, it was so very well done. And I love the Mao, bringing Mao into it and what he did. And obviously what you were referring to here now is so many of these younger people being taken in by the Candaces and the Fuenteses and so on and so forth. And they're going to be led down a path, just like those young Chinese kids were led down the path to the rice paddy, ultimately into their own demise. That's what's going to happen if they're not careful. And what we should point out too is newer things oftentimes are better. You know, a 2026, vehicle is probably going to be a little bit more technologically and mechanically advanced than a Model A. That's okay. The computers today work a lot faster than your old Commodore 64. Human beings, though, aren't those items. Human beings create those items. Human beings make better things than were around before. The newer things are better because the older people with the experience and the ability to process mistakes from the past, as you said, or learn from the mistakes of the past, we're the ones that we get better with age. We get wise. There's something called wisdom. Wisdom isn't possessed. Intelligence may be, but wisdom isn't possessed by the 19-year-old. Okay, intelligence may be, but wisdom comes to the 49, the 69, et cetera, year old, the boomers because of what they've experienced in life. So yeah, it's true that newer things, newer models, certainly are better. Fabrics are stronger now. There are all kinds of things that have been created by man that are better than the older versions are. But the human brain and the human experience, that's not one of them. Those things are different.
And I would say, amen, Bob. And what you just did is you help people understand the distinction between a thing, older things, to quote you, and a person. A person is not a thing. Another way to say what you just said is stuff degrades, souls don't. You are a soul, you're not stuff. And yeah, a car and material stuff degrades with time. But a soul, if it is obedient to the ideas of God, improves over time. Wisdom. The Bible talks repeatedly about wisdom. And here's a question. Why does, and I think we might have hinted at it last week on your show. If not, you and I texted about it. Why does God include honor your father and mother as one of the 10 commandments?
Yeah.
So if God only gave us 10 things that we needed to live by, and if you live by these 10 things, you'll enjoy the maximum amount of human freedom and flourishing. Just live by these 10. And to quote Chesterton again, okay, as I've said on your show before, we refuse to live by the 10. We refuse to live by the 10, so we get thousands upon thousands upon thousands of little laws that rush in to fill the vacuum of the 10 laws that we just refuse to acknowledge and honor. But one of the 10 is honor your father and mother. Isn't that interesting? And over again in Scripture, Old Testament and New, we see the admonition, the direction, the teaching to honor those that preceded you. There's the analogy of gray hair, that with gray hair comes wisdom, okay? This is a parable. This is a proverb. This is a metaphor, an analogy for age bringing experience and resulting in the soul being wiser rather than dumber over time. So stuff degrades, a soul, if it's obedient to God, doesn't. It improves over time. It becomes wiser, it becomes more informed, more humble, and more sanctified, set apart for holiness unto the Lord. So if you're leaning into the ideas of God and recognizing that God is God and you are not, the Bible is true, and your opinion doesn't matter at the end of the day, that you've got to have a measuring rod outside of those things being measured, or you can do no measuring, and the Bible is that measuring rod. If all of these old ideas that I just described make sense to you, over time you will become a wiser, better soul. Yeah, your stuff, your body will degrade, your car will degrade, your property will degrade, but you won't. Because as C.S. Lewis tells you, and as Jesus tells you, you are an eternal being. You're not degrading stuff. You're eternal. You don't go away. You are going to be around forever. You're either going to be around the presence of Christ, or you're going to be around the opposite, based on the ideas you embrace and the eternal nature of your soul.
Yeah, and fantastic explanation. And I'm going to close with a little bit of levity, though, on this subject, sort of. It's okay for us to recognize, too, that sometimes the younger generation knows a little bit more than we do. And it is absolutely appropriate for the reverse to be true. We had a funny discussion with my son, and my wife and I were talking to my son just about a week ago, and I think it came up as a meme online, or somebody was referencing it in some way, shape, or form on a TikTok or something like that. And we were making fun of the younger generation that doesn't know how to fill out a check. They don't literally know how to, write the words and the numbers out and so on and so forth. These basic things of life, right? And so we were kind of mocking a little bit about that. And the response from my son, by way of one of these memes or whatever, was a video of people our age struggling to figure out whether it's swipe, insert, or tapping the card, the debit card, trying to figure out that little machine there. It's like, we wrote checks, they don't know how to do it. They tap cards, and we don't know how to do it. And so it's just kind of a fun thing that, as the generations change, there are things that we know that they don't know, and surely there are going to be things that they know, and they're wondering, how do you not know that? It's because it wasn't part of what our younger generation, when we were the younger generation, was brought up with. So there's things we can learn from, I guess, in both directions. All right, Dr. Piper, great conversation as always. Great column. We'll remind everybody to follow you on X. We had your page up there, and obviously, most importantly, support the Washington Times that brings Dr. Piper's columns each and every Sunday. Sunday in online and in print on Monday. It is not an expensive subscription, so if you're looking for something that'll bring you, I don't know, a little bit of reason and wisdom and common sense, as opposed to most of the mainstream newspapers, the Washington Times is a good place to go and help Dr. Piper as well. Dr. Piper, appreciate you very much. Great stuff. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. All right, there you go. That's Dr. Everett Piper. And that is going to bring us to a close here pretty much. I can pop into the chat here to take a look at the comments briefly. Okay, what are we jumping into? Crash was just another murder-suicide, said Charlie. Huh? I think it was more than that, but it was that too. The shadow runs Netflix. No thanks, says Jimbo. Understood. No Netflix in this house. Also understood, because I did the same thing for a while. For quite a while, as a matter of fact, we unsubscribed from Netflix, and for one reason or another, my wife and I decided we need to bring it back in for certain things, and this was one of those that I thought was very important. This story has been on other crime investigative shows. Yes, it has, and I've seen some of those. They're shorter versions of it. This is the first full-length documentary, I think, that goes into the whole thing. So, with respect to that. Big Jake, and people don't believe evil exists. Easy to populate hell with souls. That is very true. Let me fast forward here. Claire Lopez always has great insight on the Mideast. Lois Irene, you're going to like tomorrow's show then, because Claire Lopez is going to bring it, and she's going to bring the facts about what's going on in Iran, in the Middle East, and what the long game is for the radicals. The 12th Imam is probably the Antichrist, Big Jake says. In a manner of speaking, it is. And she'll tell you all about it. When I was much younger, when Bush 1 went into Iraq, gas price skyrocketed. We have the same pain as today. These are things of life that the younger generation do not understand. Let's see, what else do we have here? Didn't he post a video of him eating ribs? Oh, he's talking about Tallarico. I don't know that. I did not see that, if that was true. Therese says gas prices are all over the place. I got gas for $4.20 on Tuesday south of Toledo. You're right. And you got to scan. The Gas Buddy app is a good one, by the way. Yes, it was a turkey leg, says Lois Irene, and it was on Fox. Okay. I did not see that myself, but that's pretty hypocritical. Let's see what else. Okay, I'm just trying to see what some of the comments are. I can't always tell what topic they're on by just glancing at it. My daughter is a millennial by birth, 1979. Not sure because I just don't know, but I am sure she was inoculated with a boomer vax. Charlie, the soul can foster the growth of the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Wow, Charlie, that was the deepest thing I think I've ever seen you comment on. Thank you, my friend. All right. To all of my chatters, to all of the live streamers, the people who watch the live stream, rather, each and every morning, thank you. God bless you. Please bring somebody with you. To those who are watching on replay, obviously, you can't be in the live chat, but you can sure as hell be a part of the conversation in the comment section. So please comment when you watch one of these on replay. We always end up with a lot more views on replay than we did live for obvious reasons. People have different schedules. But I ask you to not just watch, but make sure you're clicking the thumbs up when you're watching this on replay. Hit that like button, hit that join button to become part of the locals community, and hit the notifications button so you know when we're dropping new content. That bell is really important as well. All right, so everybody, the more you engage, the more the algorithm likes it, the more we can be pushed out to people who don't know we're here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dylan, running the things behind the scenes. And as always, I remind you to be well, be safe, and stay free. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.